Well, good morning everyone and welcome to the first webinar in the new series on the Adapt Builder. My name's Ian Usher, I'm Product Manager here at Learning Pool and I'm delighted to see lots of people joining us this morning. We've got folks from all sorts of organisations this morning, people from the Post Office, a number of county and city councils across the UK, a number of fire and rescue people. I'm not going to list you all, but this morning what we're going to do is we're going to give you a quick, we're going to give you a quick overview of the controls that are available to you as a participant so that you can make sure that you can interact with us. In particular, we're going to show you how to use the raise hand option. So what I'd like you to do first of all is quickly, could you just raise your hand please so that you let me know that you can hear me. I can see a number of people doing that. A forest of hands going up already. That's really good. Thank you, Becca. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Debbie, Faye, and everyone else. So today's webinar is going to be exploring engaging your learners on launch. And joining me this morning is the Academy Manager for here at Learning Pool, Kevin Doherty. Kevin's been at the heart of creating content ever since the Adapt Builder first came to life. Now, if you're a Learning Pool subscriber, of course, you've got access to the fantastic and extremely patient support desk 7 days a week. But here at Learning Pool, if any of us as throughout the team have got a question regarding the Adapt Builder, then it's almost certain that the part of that answer will always be ask Kevin Doherty. So you can be assured that we're in capable hands today. Today, Kevin is going to be looking at 3 of the new tools available within the Adapt Builder, all of which can be used to help engage your learners and get them going. The first one we're going to be looking at is the intro and outro video extension. Now that's very specifically relevant to gamified modules, but can also be used as part of any regular e-learning module. Kevin's going to be looking at that. He's also going to be looking at how to use the avatar settings in gamified modules. And finally, we're going to be looking at how to use the schedule menu to help introduce gamified modules to learners. So before we start, it will be helpful to understand how comfortable everyone attending this morning is in using the Adapt Builder. So could you please just take a few seconds to answer this poll? Let us know if you're a ninja, a novice, or a newbie. We had to use alliteration. I think it's contractually obliged. So please let us know by answering this very simple poll how you're doing. So thanks for asking that. That's really helpful. See that most of us have got some use of it. A few people, bear in mind that everyone tends to underestimate their capabilities in these sort of things. So I'm guessing that more than a quarter of us may be self-described ninjas. Most of us would describe ourselves as novices. I'd probably put myself in there as well. And a few of us either haven't used it at all or are just dipping our toes in the Adapt Builder waters. So we're going to go straight onto that. I'm going to hand over to Kevin and he's going to take over. I'll come back and give any feedback that you've got. And if you've got any questions as we go, please ask them in the questions panel on the right of your screen. We're going to be going over for about 40 minutes this morning, and there will be an opportunity. We're going to bring in the questions as appropriate as we go through. And we'll mop up any remaining questions at the end, and any that we can't answer during the session this morning we'll feedback either through the Academy or in an email. So thanks ever so much. Let's kick off. I'll hand over to Kevin.
Thank you for that introduction, Ian, and getting us all set up this morning. So yeah, as Ian said, the first thing we're going to be looking at today is the intro-outro extension. So just on screen there, you can see what is just a brief slide giving you an idea of what the intro-outro extension is. So basically, it allows you to add an upfront video that your learners will see when they first launch the module. Now today, when we're looking at the intro-outro extension, we're first of all just going to look at the use of video in e-learning. We're going to then add the extension, we're going to configure it, and we're also going to look at the relationship with learning objectives that the intro-outro extension has when triggering an outro video. So hopefully you'll all gain a bit of insight into how to use this and understand how it works. Now, before I actually just get into the actual building of the actual content, I'm just going to show you a brief example of the intro-outro in one of our new compliance modules. This is an anti-money laundering module. And so as you can see on first launch, we just come straight into a video. It's the first thing we hit on screen there. Now you will notice that the sound's been muted on that at the moment, and that's just that I didn't want to deafen you when we started playing immediately. But essentially what this video does is it welcomes the learners to the module. It sets the scene for the type of gamified content this is. It advises that we're going to be following Barry, who is not a nice guy. If you see the anti-money laundering module, he's quite the reprobate. But the video just sets the scene and explains who he is, what he does, and gives you it's basically scene setting. And the reason this is kind of like a gamified element is if you've ever played any video games, you usually open up a video game with a cutscene that places you or the hero in the midst of the mission and gives you an idea of what to expect. So that's really what the intro outro extension does. It gives you the ability to go in up front with a video. Now the reason that we're using video as well is I'm sure you're all aware that in the last few years with the improvements in broadband capability and people's internet access, video has become a huge part of e-learning, and it is something we're keen to incorporate into our content as much as possible. And I know just based on the feedback we've had from customers that more and more customers are beginning to use that themselves and actually put video in there, whether that be actually video within the content or video up front like we've got in this intro. So as you can see, the intro then ends and you're placed back into the menu screen, and you can actually go through all the content as normal. So what I'm going to do now, is I'm going to just jump into a version of this anti-money laundering course. However, our version doesn't have the intro added on there. So the first thing we actually have to do is actually add the intro outro. So it is an extension. So the method of adding that is by going to Manage Extensions, scrolling down to the available extensions, and then just adding on the intro outro. We'll just ask you to confirm that, and then when you click on yes, that intro outro will just get added in to the enabled extensions at the top of the page. So once that's in, we'll be able to actually configure it. Now for most of our extensions, as I say all, but it is about most of them, are all configurable within the project settings area of Adapt. So when you're in your course, if you just go to project settings, and then you can use the filters on the left hand side to go to extensions, where if you scroll down the list, you'll see intro outro there. And this is just where we can actually configure the intro outro. Now essentially these settings are split up into two areas. The top section is all about the intro video, and then further down the page is all about the outro. Now the first thing we're going to do is actually configure the intro video, and then we'll come back and look at how we can set up that outro, because there's a few additional options you can use when you're using an outro video on your course. So the first thing we have to do is actually to enable the intro. So that will basically switch the introduction on, and all we need to do then is to actually add a video in there. So I'm just grabbing a little link here I've got for a video. Now you can choose select an asset and add a video directly from the asset manager, or you could upload a video into the asset manager, but for the purposes of keeping your module size down, I'm going to go with the select an external asset, which just allows me to paste a link in to that MP4 video. Now where I got that MP4 video was on the Learning Pool Gateway site, where you can upload videos and they will provide you with an MP4 and an OGV link. So I'm adding the MP4 in, and I'm just going to click on save. Once it's gone in, you'll just see this little video icon, and you'll have the option to remove the asset, which we don't want to do right now. We want to keep that in. We then also want to go to the OGV alternative and click on select an external asset, and paste that in. I'm just going to change that link so it is the OGV version. So the reason for that is because Adapt is a HTML5 authoring tool. It outputs all the content in HTML5, which is why MP4 videos are playable. However, there are some browsers that have a few limitations and can't necessarily play OGG. And so the reason we put that in there is just to ensure that all browsers will be fully capable of playing the video. Now, in terms of actually adding the intro, it's just a matter of switching it on and adding those two links in, and then we just have a few different options about how that video actually gets added in there. So we can choose to play it full screen. So on the screenshot I had previously shown you, we had the video just kind of reduced down. You could see the menu in the background, but by default the full screen option will be enabled, and I'm going to keep that switched on. The next option there is the forced viewing of the intro video. Now, anytime any of your learners first access the course, then they will have to view the video no matter what. But what this forced viewing option does is that if a learner returns to the course having already visited it, if we keep this disabled, then it will mean that the user can actually skip the video and not have to sit through it the second time. However, if you believe there's a really good reason why they should sit through that video when they revisit the course, you can just enable that, and that'll ensure that they have to view the video on every launch of the actual scoring package. And then our last option here for the intro video specifically is whether or not to show a replay button. So by default it will be set to navigation bar, and that'll just show a little icon up in the top right hand corner of the screen on the salsa theme that will just allow you to click on it and choose to replay the intro video at any time. So that can be quite beneficial for these gamified modules where you have the option to basically set the scene and give them an idea of their mission. And if they want to revisit that or brush up on exactly what it is they're supposed to be doing, the replay option will allow them to do that. Now, alternatively, if you don't want them to be able to replay it, you can just set that option to no, and the video will only play once and it will not be available when they progress through the course. I'm going to keep it set to navigation bar because it's just quite nice to have that in there. Now, in terms of the intro, that's the video entirely set up. I can click on save and I can preview the course. So with the preview generating now, what will happen is it will just launch straight into the video, just like the one we saw on that demonstration copy I had at the beginning here. And that will just put the intro video on and it's all set up. As you can see, the configuration of an intro video is quite basic and very simple. Doesn't take a great deal to do that. Really, the main thing you have to think about is just what you want to use for your video, get your video created, and then upload it. And then it's very simple, just a few quick steps and you've actually got your intro configured on your course. Now I am going to just wait for this preview to open, but I'm going to give you a top tip as well. So as you can see, I've gone in here, I've added the intro video, and the intro video is just going to play over the top of the module. Now, if you haven't completed production on your module, if you're still going to be going in and making changes, modifying things, then you're going to be running a preview quite regularly. Having to sit through the intro video on every single one will be quite time consuming and also a bit frustrating for you to have to sit through that. So if you are going to be making further changes and you're going to need to do multiple previews, I'd advise you keep your intro outro enabled or keep your intro outro added to your course, but you can just disable that intro so that now when we preview the course it'll no longer jump into the video, it'll just take me straight to the menu screen. Now, if you do that, always remember to switch it back on prior to publishing the module. But it's just a nice little time saving tip to make sure you can view your content in a timely manner. So that's it. The intro is just playing away in the background there. But what I'm going to show you now is the options for the outro extension. Now they are very similar to the intro, but there's just two very noticeable differences, and we're just going to explore those. So again, to enable the outro video, we just enable it with the switch. Then we just choose select an external asset. I'm just going to go with that same video just to keep it brief here to let you see how to switch it on. So you can add your MP4 and your OGV alternative. And again, you have the option to play the outro full screen, which I'm going to keep on because that's what we've done with the intro. So for consistency, we'll keep that on. Now the two areas that are different from the intro are the next two settings. First one being the outro delay and the final one being the trigger outro video on completion of. So the outro delay, I'll cover that one first. This is specifically the number of seconds that you want to delay the video from playing. The reason you would want to do that is that if your course is going to trigger the outro on completion of the course, then a user may get to, if we had a hot graphic at the end of the course, they'll get to the hot graphic, but it will mark as complete upon them clicking the last item. So if they've clicked the last item, the video will just trigger immediately and not give them the time to necessarily read the text on that item. So the delay is to purposely give them the chance to actually read any content before moving on and viewing that video. So we can set the delay in here just in seconds. So it's by default it's set to 5, but we can change that to 10. 15, 20, however long you think they'll need. Now what will happen as well is that a countdown timer will appear on screen. So if a user has finished reading the text, they can click on the countdown and trigger the video then immediately themselves. The next option we have there really is the trigger outro video on completion of. So the outro video is designed to be triggered on completion of the course, and that's why this course option is selected. But as we were kind of developing this, we did realize, there's other times we may want to trigger the outro. Quite a lot of our gamified compliance modules, we wanted to trigger it prior to them going into the assessment. So we added a few different options on there for how we can trigger that. So if we click on the drop down, we have the option for course, which will be when all components are marked as complete. We have the option for assessment, which will be when all components are marked as complete and the assessment's passed. Or we have the option for learning objectives. Now the simple setup is to go for course, but I'm just going to push you a little bit and go for the learning objectives option. Now, the learning objectives relate to the learning objectives extension, which allows you to add in different learning objectives to your course, and they can each be tagged to different components. Now, as they're tagged to the components, the learning objective will be achieved by completing the component, or if it's a question component, successfully completing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trigger the outro video on completion of the learning objective. All we need to do then is actually add in the specific learning objective that will trigger the video. So I'm just going to click on add. Now, I have a few learning objectives in here, but I'm just going to add a new one called LO5. So I'm just going to add the code in and click OK. Now, if I just scroll up above the intro outro, we have the learning objectives extension. If I scroll down, I can click on add. I can add in the LO5 learning objective, and I'm just going to call this trigger outro. So this is a very basic way of doing it, where we are just going to trigger the outro on the completion of one learning objective. Whereas if you're doing this throughout your course, you might want to trigger on multiple items. But I'm just going to add this LO5. I'm going to click on save. Now, this is very basic because I'm going to actually add this to page 1. And we have just a text component down here. If I click into the text component, under the extensions, there's the option for learning objectives. And this is where I can tag this component with a learning objective. So I'm just going to pop in learning objective 5 there and then click on save. So in essence, what we're saying is that once a user completes learning objective 5, therefore completing the component, that the outro video will trigger. So I'm just going to demonstrate that to you now and go into page 1 of our course. As you can see, I have the intro video disabled just to allow us to get in there nice and quick. Now this is just a text component, so it will mark as complete upon me viewing the content. And as you'll see, you'll get this pop-up advising the video is displaying in, and it gives you a little countdown. So we can wait for that to end, or we can click on it just to trigger that outro video. And your outro video can be used just as a way of summarizing the content on the course. Obviously, I'm just using the same video, but it can summarize your course, reinforce the main learning objectives, or if it's a gamified module, almost provide an ending scene for your content. But that's really it for the intro outro extension. It just lets you put video in at the beginning and trigger it at the end. And as I say, it's quite flexible in how you can use that. The other thing I should add is that the intro and the outro are not requirements. You don't need to have an intro and an outro, and you don't necessarily need to have either, but you can have an intro or an outro on its own. You can choose to have either of those, which is why you have the enable switch for both of them in there.
Kevin, that's fantastic. Thank you. We've got a few questions coming in. First one is probably one that a lot of people are going to ask, and I think I know where the answer is. Jen has asked, with the intro and outro video, can you use Vimeo? And I presume you'd insert YouTube as an option as to what people might want to use in there.
So at the moment, it is only the select an asset and select an external asset option. It doesn't currently allow for the use of Vimeo or YouTube videos. However, we were aware that this is something people will want, so we do actually have an enhancement in with our development team who are currently working on developing that to include the options for Vimeo and YouTube. And the way that'll work is just exactly like the media component, where you'll just have the drop down to select the option and then play the video from Vimeo or YouTube by dropping the URL in.
Okay, I'm going to race through these questions, see if we can get through as many. Sally asks, there's a load coming in now. Sally asks, can the outro run video automatically or can it run on a click?
Well, it's designed to run automatically based on the completion, but when that little countdown timer appears, if you click on that, it will trigger immediately if you click on the countdown option.
Okay. And just, there are a load of questions coming in. What we're going to do, folks, with the questions we can't answer, I'm sure we'll post a follow-up in the Academy to this, and we can go through the questions there. A couple of people have asked the same question. People who are maybe new to making videos, are there any tools that you'd recommend? We can provide a load of links in the Academy here, but to making a simple video that might be appropriate for this.
There's a few options. I know that POW Tunes, P-O-W Tunes, is one that's quite popular with people. But we do have quite a few resources we can let you know about, and we'll get that put into the responses for you all.
Okay. Yeah. There are a load of questions, but we've got three modules to cover. So we're going to move on to the next section, where Kevin's going to go through and just show us a little bit about how you can use the avatar settings in gamified modules.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. So yeah, the avatar extension is the next one up. And what the avatar extension does is upfront presents you with a character selection so that you can choose a character that you will essentially play through on the course. So the idea behind the avatar is, well, an avatar itself is a digital representation of a user or a learner or a gamer. When they're playing a game, it's meant to be the person that embodies them. And on the gamified modules, we've added a few different avatars. You can select your person. They will appear in the top left-hand corner of the course, but then as you're playing through, it will also pop up and provide you with feedback and also some helpful hints and tips depending on your setup there. So I'm just going to switch over now to our sustainability module, which just demonstrates this quite effectively. So as we launch the module, up front we get presented with this little selection of characters, and we can basically click through and make our selection for who we want to be the mayor of Smoke City, which is the scenario in this, which is a very heavily polluted city that we need to basically cleanse. So we can just go through and we can choose our character and click on begin. Now as we click on begin, that little icon goes up into the top left hand side of the screen and will remain there. And when we're going through the configuration, you'll see we have a few naming options as well, but on this course we just haven't enabled that for right now. Now if you're using the avatar, as I say, you can configure it to appear at different points in the module by configuring it against the component. So if I scroll down, we actually have a blank component here, and as we hit the blank component, the avatar pops down, gives us a little bit of information on the course, but then we can just click on that to dismiss it. Now it will give us information throughout the course, but it is also possible for us to configure it so that it will display any question feedback. And that's what we're just going to have a quick look at now, is how to enable this and configure it. So again, it's through the Manage Extensions option, scroll down to the Available Extensions, click on Add for the avatar. We'll just get added to the list of enabled extensions, and then we can go back to menu. And again, just like before with the intro outro, the main configuration settings for this are within project settings. So under project settings, you can click on the extensions filter on the left hand side of the page, and then you'll have your avatar option. Now there's a few options in here. We're not going to go through the full setup of all those characters you saw in that example. I'm just going to show you how we can set two of them up. The first thing to do is to enable the avatar. If we haven't got that on, it will not appear on the course at all. We can also choose to allow the user to change the avatar. So on this course, we have it switched on, so you can click on your avatar, navigate through, and choose to change. So you can then have a different avatar presenting that feedback or the information. Now for this demo, I'm just going to keep that switched off because we've seen that already. But I am going to enable the Use Avatar to display feedback. So just by switching that on, and also not using the tutor extension, which you would normally use for feedback, it means that any of the feedback we've entered into any question components, so just into the standard correct or incorrect feedback fields, will now be displayed by the avatar. I'd also mentioned the option for a name. So you do have the option where you can ask for a name and the user will manually type that in before they can click on begin, or alternatively you can read from the LMS. Now, if you read from the LMS, it will just base the name on the actual user's first name and last name stored within the learning management system. Now, I'm going to go for read from LMS on this. Now, when you're previewing it, you'll see an odd one because it'll be called Sam surname, I believe it is. But the main crux of this is actually adding our avatar characters onto the course. So to do that, we just click on the add option. So just pop out a little option for us to select an asset. And again, just like all assets in Adapt, you have select an asset or select an external asset. The external asset is an image that we hosted elsewhere. But if we click on select an asset, it'll open up our asset manager. And we can just have a look for one of our avatars, which is Teresa Green. And we can just click on Teresa Green and then click on done to add her in there. I'm just going to click OK and have Teresa added in, and then we're going to get Sustainable added in as well. Now you will notice there's some information on the graphics there that can be used for an avatar. So we do recommend using an image of around 150 pixels by 150 pixels. Now if you're anybody with a keen eye will notice I'm using slightly bigger images on this one. And that is acceptable. The main thing we would advise is that you use a square image. Because the space for an avatar is square, if you use anything larger than that, or anything basically rectangular, it will be forced into that square shape and will become a bit distorted. So that's how we would advise you to add that. Now, when I was selecting the avatar, you'll notice we have this nice background image in. Now, the way to add that background image in is actually on our avatar settings. We have the option for classes. Now, that classes option will allow you to add in any classes for a background image or a background color as well. So I'm just going to pop in background image 36 and background color 1 to allow that to appear on screen. The remaining settings on here are all the actual text that you'll see on the course. So as you remember, if you remember from the avatar when it first popped up, we were asking which candidate will be the mayor of Smoke City. So for the instruction text, we can pop that in, and that's what will appear above our avatar selection. And then the rest of these are buttons, which we're just going to keep as they are. Each of the buttons have their standard text, which will be visible on screen, and their ARIA label, which is picked up then by screen readers for accessibility. So really at this stage, I can just click on Save, and then I can click on Preview. Now, what I'm going to do here is basically show you the avatar being used as feedback. So I enable the option for feedback. I haven't done anything else on the course to any of the components. So when this course previews, I'll go in and answer a question, and the actual text that's going to appear is taken directly from the question component feedback. So there's no real additional setup when you're using avatar as feedback. It's just a matter of ensuring that's checked in the project settings. Now you will notice as well, my course is only going to have the two options on there because we've only added Teresa and Sue as selectable avatars. And there we go. So I'm just going to select Sue there and then click on Begin. And if I just going to jump in to page 2 and scroll down to one of our question components. Now this will work with multiple attempts as well. So I'm going to get this question wrong to begin with and click on Submit, at which point Sue appears, advise me it's not right, and to click or tap on Reset. So I can click on her to dismiss, reset the question, and take that again, and then Sue will come back down and give me that feedback. So it's very, very simple. As I say, you just set that up in your component as you normally would for any question component, and the avatar will then deliver that feedback to your user. So that's it, they set it up as feedback. The only other element we have is basically to determine when they appear to give advice throughout the course. So again, I'm just going to very quickly go into the builder, and I'm just going to go to this text component for this blank component underneath that text. So I'm configuring this against a text component, but you can configure it against any component at all. So if I go down to extensions, we'll have the option for avatar, and this is we can choose to add the avatar messages. There's an option for the event trigger. Now because this is a text component, we are only going to be adding this to when the component comes into view. because immediately it gets marked as complete. We can choose the avatar position, which is in relation to the component itself. So it'll just mean if they appear either just above the component or below, and the direction there, left or right, determines where the image appears. We can also set a delay time if you want to hold off on that text appearing. But for my example, I just want it to appear immediately, so I'm not going to enter a delay time. I'm just going to click on OK after I've added a little bit of text in there. And then when I click on save and then preview, we'll get a much quicker preview this time. But we can then jump into page 2 and very easily just see how that message then appears. Now, as I say, on any sort of text or graphic component or a responsive iframe, for example, where the component marks as complete upon being visible, you would really only use the view option. But for something like a narrative or a hot graphic, you will have the option to mark it on completion. So if you want, you can make an avatar appear on completing the course. So on screen we have our graphic and text component, but as I scroll down to where that blank is, Sue pops out and just gives us that little message that we set up. So it really is quite simple in actually configuring it. The real challenge is in making sure that when you're crafting this module or writing it or planning it, that you really think about when your avatar appears, what information it's giving, and making sure that you're not just putting it in there just to throw something at your learners. You know, actually make them think or give them some advice as they navigate through the course.
Okay, so, grand. Thank you, Kevin. We've got loads and loads of questions about avatars coming in. Fortunately, no one mistaking this for anything to do with the film. So Debbie asks, are there a range of pre-populated avatar graphics available in the tool? And Nicola's sort of similar question, can you provide a list? And follow-up to that is, will there be a guide on this stuff in the Academy? I think the answer to the last one is, oh, yes, there will.
Yeah, the answer to the last one is yes, there will, and yes, there is. So the avatar demonstration course is actually up on the Academy at the moment, and it is available to anyone using the Academy. Now, in regards to avatars available for selection, at the moment, the only avatars you would get is if you subscribe to the compliance course, because they're the only courses that have the avatar used at the moment. However, this isn't the first time that we've discussed this with customers, and we know it is something people are quite keen to do. So I know that there has been some discussion among our graphics team about creating a selection of different avatar characters. So I will follow up with them and just see where we're at with that and get back to you. But the one thing I would advise about the avatar is you don't need to overcomplicate it and worry too much about your graphics. It's very easy to create these avatars. In fact, I was in a training session last week with a few members of staff, and we were going through the avatar, and we wanted to use some images. I didn't want to go back and use these images as I've done today. So what we did was we went around the room, took a few photographs on an iPhone, imported them onto the computer, cropped it as a square image on their heads, and the individuals became the avatars that appear throughout the course. So you can have these animated kind of graphics that we've used, sort of cartoony ones, but you can also just use a real life image as a quick way to get those added into your course.
Yeah, and just like with the videos, there are a number of tools online, aren't there, to create little kind of mini-me's or whatever you'd like to call them. And we maybe put some links into some of those as well in the Academy. Question from Ruth. There are lots of questions about this, but what we're going to do, I think, was we'll put a document regarding these, or a series of discussions on the Academy, so you can go and see the answers there. We will try and go through every question that's come through. Ruth asked something quite specific. Is it possible to give each avatar a certain viewpoint, given a particular job role, and then the text reflects what the learning objectives are for that person? I imagine that's something to do with roles and positions within an organisation.
Yeah, currently at the moment it's not. However, one of the things I've been doing since we've got these extensions and been playing about with them is looking at ways to basically do a phase 2 on them. So that idea that you've just suggested is something that we've been kind of discussing in the content team, and we're just trying to formulate a way that we can actually do that as well and then speak with our developers. So at the moment, you can have different viewpoints per avatar. And the main reason for that is because the initial use of this is to be that individual character that you're playing as. So even though they are different avatars, each one is essentially delivering the same information. But what you're talking about, to have basically a consequence of having a different avatar to present different information, is something I am quite interested in. And it is something, as I say, we'll be speaking with the development team about.
Fantastic. Right, so we're going to move on to the final part of this morning's webinar, which Kevin's going to look at how to use the schedule menu to introduce gamified modules.
Yeah, so on screen here, what you can't see is the schedule menu, but it's just a selection of a few different menus. I'm going to show you the schedule menu now in a moment, but I've got this one on basically to show you, you can have different menus in Adapt, and each one can look quite different. So on screen, you've got the full screen menu, the cinnamon menu, and then the spectrum menu. And each one just offers you a little bit of a different entrance point to the module and a different way of kind of highlighting content to your users. And with that in mind, we developed a new schedule menu. And I'm just going to show you how to configure that. But before I show you how to configure it, I want to show you a nice example of how it looks. So the schedule menu is basically designed to appear like a mobile phone on screen, where you have each page listed against a specific time on this, like it's a calendar on your phone. Now what you can do is you can scroll down through each section, and you can have these little images added in as well for each section. Alternatively, the phone itself can be used to navigate through the actual sections. So you can use those just to jump up and down the page before you go in and view it. Or you can also use the home button just to jump to the top of the page again if you wish. So it's quite a nice menu, but there's quite a few configuration things we need to set up on it. I'm going to show you an example of what the course currently looks like that I'm working on. So it's the exact same course you just saw, but I mean, as you can see, that menu is very different and just looks nowhere near as good as the schedule menu does. So what I'm going to do is go to an example version of this course that I've got set up that uses that box menu that's just not very nice looking in comparison. But what I want to do first of all then is actually to switch out my menu, which can be done very quickly through Menu Picker, where we can click on Schedule menu and then click on Save. Now that will switch it over to the schedule menu, but it won't necessarily have everything configured. So what we want to do now is we actually want to set up the main background image on the menu, which is just done through theme customization. And then on the menu section, you have a menu top background image. I'm just going to type in schedule here and select an image from my course or from my asset manager. Oh, if I could spell schedule. Now this is going to be a bit of a difficult image to see, and the reason being is that it's actually a very transparent image with different shapes on it. So it is very, very difficult to see there, but when we preview the course you will see it on there. So that's all we need to do is just to set the background image, and that'll appear at the top of the menu. The other thing I'm going to do, if I just switch over to the example version, you'll notice that on every one of the pages we had little icons appearing as well. So the way they are actually added is added at page level through the graphic option. So this always sits here, but if I click on select an asset, it's going to choose source 1 for this one. I can add in that little alarm clock and click on done, and then click on save. So now I've only switched to the menu, I've added a background image, and I've added that image for the first clock, and then I'm going to click on preview. So I haven't got the menu fully set up yet, and there's a few features that you may not even have noticed when you first viewed the screen, but you might pick up on them a bit more now when I show you this basically incomplete version of the menu. So this preview will just take a few more moments there as it just rebuilds from switching out to the menu. I'm just going to switch over here so you can see this. If you actually just look, you'll see this background image coming all the way down the page. But when my preview generates, it will appear just slightly differently to that. Okay, so as I say, because we switched the menu, it is doing a full rebuild of the course. So it's pulling in all the latest version of the code, which is why it just takes that little moment longer just to generate. So as you can see, we've got the background image in, and the phone just appears immediately on screen. But as we scroll down, we don't have that background image playing throughout. Now you will notice every page has its color. That is automatically pulled from the background colors on the theme customization. So just like all the rest of our menus, that's where the color pulls from, but it is possible for us to add classes onto the page and they'll pick that up. But what I really wanted to highlight here is we don't have the menu background image scrolling down the page. And you may have noticed when we first launched this that there was actually a little bit of animation as each of these items slid in. But that doesn't appear at all on the course without adding a few classes in there. So first one I'm going to put in is the menu background repeated. Now what menu background repeated will do is basically repeat that background image all the way through the course, or all the way through the menu. So it's just within project settings, under the settings option, we have a classes field where we can add menu background repeated in, which will just cause that to, as I say, appear throughout the page. And then we can add the slide in class as well. Now slide in is that little bit of animation that you see on the menu. And so when the menu generates, I'll make sure we're over on it so that you can actually see that happening in real time. So as the phone pops in, you'll see each of those items just scrolls in rather than just appearing. Just adds a little bit of whimsy and a kind of animation to your course and just lifts it from just standard menu type. But as we scroll down now as well, you can see that that menu background image pulls through. And then the last thing I just want to show you very quickly is, as I mentioned, the background colors and theme customization. Background color 1 automatically pulls through for page 1. Background color 2 pulls through for page 2. But what I can do as well is if I go into page 2 and interaction platter, if I add in background dash color 3 and then click on save and preview, by adding that class in, we're setting it on the page as the page background color, but as well as that, the schedule menu recognizes that the class has been entered, and rather than pulling the class directly from theme customization, we'll actually apply it to that page that we've added the class to as well. So that's a very, very quick run through of the schedule menu. But I mean, as you can see, it's not too difficult to set up. Your colors all come from your theme, which you'll generally have set up anyway. The titles that appear on the actual phone itself are all based on the pages that you've entered. And I should mention the day and the date that appear on screen is pulled automatically from your computer. So it will pick up on the day and date based on wherever you've opened that course. So if you publish that course and put it on an LMS, then your learners will always see the day they're actually completing that.
Kevin, thank you. That's fantastic. A couple of questions on that. Let's just find this question. Laura's asked, do the slide-in animations only work on the schedule menu? Is that something specific to that menu?
It is. So those little slide-in options are specific to the schedule menu, and they were designed to appear on this menu only. Each menu kind of has its own different look and feel, so they all kind of do slight things a little bit differently. For example, our carbon menu is a little bit of animation as you hover over the page titles, and they reveal the additional summary text. But this slide-in option with a phone is specific to the schedule menu.
And Angelina's got a question, probably a nice one to finish on, that's got a summary of, maybe brings everything together we've covered this morning. Are there any plans there to be an example gamification course? In the same way, if people are already on the Academy, they might be familiar with the How to Take a Selfie course. Doing something parallel to that so that everyone can learn how to use all the gamification features. Yeah,
so that's something we're currently exploring at the moment, is basically creating a new module. It's going to take a slightly different slant from the selfie module. What we're thinking about doing, what I am working on at the moment is an updated version of the Understanding Adapt Components module, which is going to be a much bigger module and kind of done slightly differently and incorporating the gamification modules kind of page by page, building them up to be actually used. So we are working on that at the moment, and it is going to be made available in the Academy as a fully configured module, but then also provide you with the storyboard and the information required to create that yourself.
Fantastic. That's probably all the questions we've got time for. As I've said, we've been kind of swamped by an absolute shower of questions this morning. So what we're going to do is we're going to put all these together, probably put them in a document that will go onto the Academy. So if you've attended this morning, you'll get a link to the recording of this morning's events arriving in your inbox shortly, and it'll be sent to the same email address that you registered with. The next webinar in this series on the Adapt Builder takes place in 2 weeks' time on the 8th of November at the same time, and it will show you how you can add an extra level to your content. Kevin's going to be looking at the mission menu and the mentor and the health health gauge extensions that are in the builder. But you don't have to register for that. Again, the good news is that by registering for today's webinar, you've already secured your place for the next 2. So all that remains to do is to say thank you ever so much for Kevin for leading us through that this morning. You can now go back and wait for the email to arrive with the recording and share it with your colleagues. But Kevin, thank you ever so much for your time. Thank you very much for joining us wherever you've come from, and we hope to see you again in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, thank you, Ian, and thanks everybody for attending as well.